Hello everyone, thanks again for tuning in to a new episode of Coffee with Nick. In this channel is where we actually use the fundamentals to look at what the right stocks to get into and use the technicals to find out when exactly we should get into them. So I'm very excited to do this episode today. Wanted first to look through very quickly what is my current portfolio because I haven't update a new video over the weekend. I was supposed to, but I didn't get around to doing it because I was caught up with some other stuff. So anyways, so Monday has gone, and then now this is Tuesday, and this is my current portfolio as it stands. I did some trades yesterday, mostly adding to Tesla and also starting new position in Xpeng and NVDA. So right now I have about 7 positions, so you can look at them here. Tesla is my largest position, followed by Facebook, Zoom, Xpeng, NVDA, MELI, and then ROKU. So these last two, MELI and ROKU, they have earnings out on Wednesday. So I don't plan to add to them at all. I want to see what happens when the earnings come out. Right now, about 80% invested and approximately about close to 20% in cash. So that gives me a little bit of spare firepower if I need to kind of add to any of these positions. So let's have a quick look on the chart and see what they kind of look like. These are my 7 positions. Roku was down, 2 were red yesterday, Roku and Facebook. So Roku is actually right. I got in around here, around 434. I was hoping for kind of bounce or support around 21 EMA. Didn't quite pan out, and it's kind of broke down through here. But volume wasn't exceptionally high yesterday, and it kind of recovered a little bit from the low. So we'll see what happens. I mean, ultimately for Roku, I'm looking at the earnings, and hopefully that's a catalyst for it to spark it on a new run. When Snap released its earnings last week, Roku actually had a big jump as well, up almost 12% on the day, right? Because most investors felt like Snap's good earnings were reflective of the entire digital ad environment, and Roku obviously will benefit from that. And so there was a sharp increase in its price. But then since then, that has come down, and I was looking at this and I was thinking to myself, why would investors in kind of sell it lower than where it was before Snap's earnings came out? It's kind of strange to think that on the first day when Snap earnings were released, most investors were so positive on Roku being able to match that kind of growth or perhaps even exceed it. But clearly after that there was some reaction, and obviously there was some market sell-off last week towards the end as well, and Roku continued to kind of trend downwards even yesterday when growth stocks were generally doing better. I'm not sure this is necessarily a sign of what investors think that its earnings will pan out to be. Because if you look at the volume on this day when it went up sharply, it was actually very extremely high volume. This looks to me very institutional, kind of support rather than retail. Feels to me that this kind of this drop off here is perhaps a little bit overdone. And if earnings turn out to be where investors originally thought it might have been on this day, if it has good earnings, I feel like this could be a catalyst to kind of spark off a really good run, bounce and run from this point here. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to add to Roku, but I'm not going to close this position, unless it hits my stop loss. Then that's a different thing. But if not, I'm planning to hold this into earnings and then see, where we are coming out of it. All right. Next is Facebook, also down yesterday, about 1.2%, I believe. 1.22%. So Facebook has earnings last week obviously released, and then it had a sharp drop of 4%. It didn't drop the way Amazon dropped after earnings came out. So in fact, I closed my Amazon position after earnings came out, but I held on to my entire Facebook position. You can see that where I draw the 2 black lines here. These were the high and the low of the candle of the day earnings came out. I mean, actually the following day. So this was the high and the low. Came down 4%, and then now Friday was still alright, but yesterday, it came down a bit more and kind of under the 21 EMA now. So, but volume was pretty light. So, not planning to do anything here. I look at the report. Obviously, the earnings report that Facebook had. It was actually a really good report. I actually did an earlier video on it as well, where I kind of explain my logic around why I think this sell-off will not last. So I'm not going to go further into that. But right now, I obviously have my stop loss kind of here, around 334. So, but if not, I'm looking at see whether as it will bounce, if it actually drops off a little bit more closer to the 50 SMA. The 50 SMA have been very good support for Facebook over the last, even this entire period of when there was a lot of growth kind of tech sell off around March to late Feb to May. The 50 SMA has been very strong support. So with this very good earnings, I don't really think that there's any reason that Facebook will actually kind of drop off now, below this support point. We'll see what happens, but I'm kind of quietly confident and optimistic that we'll see a bounce in the price over the next couple of days or 1-2 weeks as well. Right? So long Facebook is holding this support, I'm not really going to bother much about it. Zoom, another one of my bigger positions. So I have 4 positions that are around 15% to 7. Tesla is the largest at 17%. The rest are about 15%. So Zoom is one of those. Had a really good bounce up from here. In fact, I added at this 390, 391 thereabouts, a third entry. My early entries were lower around here, and there was a really good bounce this day up above the 200 SMA, and I thought that it was going to go on a good run. It didn't kind of pull back here, and yesterday it actually dropped sharply, but it recovered very quickly, in fact. So there's a strong, I feel like that's a sign of strong support in terms of demand. So this is like a hammer kind of candle. Managed to hold is above the 200 SMA. We'll see what happens here, but there's a lot of news obviously of the Delta variant, more cases in the US and just generally around the world. Even here in Singapore, we have new kind of restrictions. No more dining in restaurants and stuff like that. The working from home is the default again here in Singapore. So obviously the Delta variant is making its way around the world. And that in certain ways, while it's not positive for society at large, could be positive news for Zoom. If a lot of places go back to working from home because of that. Regardless, I kind of explain my reasons for being positive on Zoom outside of the COVID Delta variant itself. Largely due around the acquisition of Five9 and plus, where the growth is coming from, Zoom Phone, etc. So I'm kind of fairly positive on Zoom. And then, the chart here still looks pretty okay to me. And I feel like it could be due for a nice bounce up here and a run into earnings, which I think is probably coming up end August, 1st Sep, right? So probably around a month away from earnings. So could be time for it to see a nice run up here. And then we have MELI, which is releasing its earnings on Wednesday. Kind of been trading around this area, up above the 200 SMA. Here it actually hit that again yesterday, bounced back up right all the way up here. Ended positive actually, about 0.06%. Not going to do very much with this one as well. A bit like Roku for me. These two companies I really like, where I think their earnings is likely to be, they're likely to have good earnings. That's my feel. But not going to add to them because I don't really want to add to a 5% position, with earnings so close. I prefer, I prefer to have a look at what happens when the earnings come, what the earnings are like, what earnings initial reaction is, and then decide what to do next. Alright, so holding MELI as well into earnings. I have a stop that's pretty far away at this point, so I don't think it's going to break this stop loss level over the next 2 days, but hopefully not. But we'll see what happens when earnings come out. NVDA, I had a good run with this one. Previously, I bought somewhere around, I think, that was probably before the split, so I can't remember what it actually equates like here. on the chart, but I had a nice run around this point from here all the way to here. When it cracked this part, it cracked this level, I actually sold around here, came down, went back up, I went in, out again, and then now I'm back in. Mostly because I got in yesterday. NVDA obviously is one of the market leaders over the last couple of months. I don't think it's done yet. If you look at AMD, that's obviously has kind of really rocketed over the last couple of days. I feel like NVIDIA obviously is consolidating right now. It has a nice big run, a lot of volume coming in, and now it's pull back, consolidating. I suppose you'll be fine if you got in anywhere here, but I kind of waited and I got in and out around here, I believe, and then I was waiting for a new sign that it'll be right time to get in. That's mostly if you actually crack this level. The low of this point here was around 197, so I was looking for a sign that it was getting over and that it was stay above this level. Got that yesterday. I got in actually at 197.5 exactly, so right at the level it closed. I actually got in earlier and then I put a limit order for 197.5. It was higher than when I put that in, and then eventually it came down to that level. Right, so I think Nvidia's earnings is coming out mid-August. When it had a big run up, it was pretty stretched from the 50 SMA. It's much closer now. I like the fact that it actually held this level above this blue line. All right, so undercut this low and then rally above it, and then previously twice it rallied above it, but it wasn't able to hold this level. Both times it fell below that. Yesterday it did. Volume was still very low, so it's still kind of consolidation period, but maybe it's kind of moving a level higher, and I would much prefer it consolidate above this blue line. So we'll see what happens, but I'm holding to this position at this moment. Don't plan to add to NVIDIA as well. Alright, then we have Tesla, which is now my largest position. One of the better trades I did last week. Last week wasn't a good week for me, but this was one of the better trades. Obviously, the earnings report came out. There was a bit of earnings reaction. It wasn't huge one way or the other. I think earnings came out around here, around these few days. Alright, then I was waiting and it came down to the 200 SMA level a couple of times. After I saw this particular candle when it kind of really dropped heavily, and then it kind of eventually closed above the 200 SMA on very high volume for that day as well, I decided that was a sign for me to kind of take out entry position in it. And I know I've seen a couple of analyst reports, watched some videos by some other financial YouTubers. I like what I hear about Tesla. I think it's obviously going to be a strong growth stock. That's my current thinking. All right. So, but I was just waiting for a good point to get in, and then this seems like a good point. When it kind of like what I mentioned, after this candle, it managed to close at the 200 SMA. On the next day, I put in an order when it was right here at 646. So that was my first entry, right at the 200 SMA level. And then very lucky that next day it got a massive jump up. Sometimes when that happens and you didn't have an earlier position, you kind of be scared off by that and not really want to take a second entry even, right? But because I had this entry here, on this day it went up really high. I didn't get in when it was at this point. I put in a limit order for 683.7, and then it came down, and then I got into my second entry, closed a little bit above that, very nicely. All right, and then I put in a stop yesterday for $700 for a buy order. So when triggered a market, 700.3, that's my entry price. It went really high up. I was happy to see it was 720 plus, but eventually it closed much lower, about 709. We'll see what happens today. I like where the way that chart is looking. Obviously, it's very strong right now, and most importantly, it has cracked this downtrend line. It's cracked the $700 level. It put in a close above this line here, which is the previous high of this whole entire period. So this was the previous high. So yesterday it cracked that and stayed above that level, and on very high volume as well. So I like everything I see on the chart here for Tesla. I like the earnings reports, on the fundamentals of this particular stock. So going to sit tight on this one. Probably move my stop loss up from this point 626. I'm going to move that up to right now. I'm going to move that to about 645. I looked at it earlier. I wanted 645 will put it just slightly below this candle, right, and below the 200 SMA. So that's where I'm going to put my stop loss. Right, so around 645 level around here. All right, so and then I got my last position, Xpeng, which I got in yesterday. If you watch my earlier videos and follow my Twitter, you know that I actually, been tracking this, and I actually got, at one point it was my largest position when it was around here. I had a nice gain up here this point, and then the China crackdown news came out here, right, on the 23rd. So at this point, it was my largest position. At this point, I was completely gone. I sold off everything, for about 6% gain, all right, over this period of time. And then it dropped off dramatically. I felt like I was looking like a genius. Obviously not. It came right back rolling up. So I didn't get any positions around here. But in my opinion, that was part of my entire plan. Is that there's so much unknowns about how the Chinese government will be cracking down on all these technology companies. I did not want to take the chance that or when there's so many unknowns and uncertainties about it. But then when it came back rolling up, and then I got back in yesterday around 41.90, which was the price that I actually sold here previously. So it kind of like it's continuation of my earlier trades. So I sold off my entire position, which was about 15% of my entire position here at about 41.9. I bought back about 10% of my position now, of my portfolio, all right, around 41.9. And then I put in another order here when it went above this line here, so I managed to get in about 43.25. It closed just a little bit above that. So right now it's about 15% position for me. All right, so pretty much, I probably lost a little bit of profits that I might have if I did not sell here. But there's no way I was going to take a chance with this downtrend line and on so much bad news. I kind of like where we are now. I was looking to re-enter on Friday when it actually got above this level here, which this blue line, but which is actually the high of that day, the day the drop came about. So but I was a little bit, I suppose you can say, scared off by the news from China, and I just wanted to be very sure before I make a re-entry into Xpeng. So if you notice right now, it's actually trading above the high of that candle, the day it dropped dramatically, right? And in fact, above the high of this day as well, which is the day I sold off, right? Which is the news started coming in. Xpeng wasn't badly, it was affected. It was about 5% drop that day, but this was the day that it actually dropped dramatically, like 14%. So congratulations to anyone who was brave enough and smart enough to get in around here. So anyway, right now we are back here, back in. The stock is the chart looking good. Volume was very high these 2 days, which it had two big moves. I obviously didn't get much all of that. I'm probably up around, I believe, about let me see, have a quick look. I'm up about 2% on my position, so my average cost is probably around here, just slightly below where it closed, about 2% gain for me at the moment. So, but I really like Xpeng because I've been doing more research even in this time that I when I was buying it and I sold off that, when I was not in the stock. I was doing more research on it and been reading more about it, and I like what I see. So my conviction level has kind of gone up one level as well. And the price now, obviously the chart is looking good. If I like to compare it, in certain ways. If you look at this was the day, obviously a lot of tech stocks were dropping off, right? 23rd. And then let's say you compare that to, say, another popular, China's stock, let's say Futu. you can see that on the 23rd, similar drop, and then just like Xpeng, then another big drop here, right, a 14% drop, similar to Xpeng, which also had a 14% drop on this day. You can see that actually the price, while it has made some recovery, it hasn't recovered dramatically compared to, like Xpeng right now is trading above the high of its 23rd July price, and obviously above the 27th July price, but not quite for Futu. If you notice, the high of this day is actually 111.62. Right now is 111.29, so it's actually a little bit below the high of 27, and obviously very far away from the high of 23rd July. Alright, so if you compare that to Xpeng, which is now here, so to me it feels like the market has I mean, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the regulatory environment in China. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty around that. But if I had to place my bet on it, then I want to place my bet on a stock where the market has kind of put its verdict and say, hey, with right now the price is above these 2 days, the high of these 2 days, right? The market has put its verdict in and say that there's enough that in Xpeng that we like, that we are willing to take that risk of investing it, and that's my takeaway from where the price is trading right now relative to the high of these 2 days. All right, and obviously Xpeng has a lot of good news coming out for it. One of which is deliveries numbers for July, which just came out yesterday. In fact, it has first time I think that the monthly delivery numbers is higher than NIO, right? 8040 compared to NIO 7931. But to me, that's not the key part of the news. What is more important, I feel like, is monthly numbers relative to the month before, because I think that shows a trend of its ability to increase its capacity to deliver, for production. I've been watching this other YouTuber. All right, you can follow him if you like as well. I think he does a really good video on Xpeng, and he talks a lot. There's a lot of stuff that he shares about it that I think is very useful, and so you can check him out. Channel is just in. This is the video that I saw on 10th of July. He makes some good points, particularly around how if you look at the numbers from the deliveries this year, at this point, so May numbers were about 10% up from April's numbers, and then June numbers were about 15% up on May's numbers. And his point was that if Xpeng can maintain this trajectory, that would have been great. But then this July numbers actually really exceeded that. It was about 22% above June numbers as well. So he mentions about how the seasonality will come into play, because you tend to get a higher volumes in the second half of the year. So I had a look at the numbers. I wasn't able to find August and July numbers, but the July numbers, based on what I read, is actually about 2,451 for last year. So probably around here. And then you got an August number, which I have no idea what that is. And then likely around here, I suppose. Then you get September numbers for 3,400, and a small dip here. And then going to the last couple of days of the month, it kind of really goes very strongly. And then also in January as well. So, and then before it kind of tails off in February, and then before it kind of goes back up in March. So long story short is that it's very likely that we will see increasing delivery numbers for Xpeng in the second half of the year, as well as the growth potentially could even accelerate. Right, so it has accelerated over the last couple of months. So we don't know what's going to happen, but there's a lot of positive news around its production, a new factory as well. So and I like, obviously, what I mentioned earlier. I like what I saw on the price chart. So do check out this video if you want to, and some good news that he shared, some good information that he shared there as well, right? And then obviously so everything looks pretty positive right now in terms of the fundamental news. And like what I mentioned, I feel like the market has given its verdict around Xpeng, that yes, there's going to be a risk attached to buying any China related stocks, but the market is willing to make exception here for this particular stock because everything else around this is pretty positive. Do remember one thing as well, that Xpeng as one of its shareholders is actually the Guangzhou government. All right, so in March, the Guangzhou government made about like $78 million investment into the company. So one of its shareholders is actually the provincial government of Guangzhou. So I don't know whether that actually means anything in the world of China, you know, as all its regulatory environment. But to me, you know, that's probably a plus versus a fully private company, right? And obviously, there's some talk about how what the government is cracking down on this other stuff like, you know, education, ed tech, you know, gaming, etc. You know, EVs is one area they are fully behind, right? I don't know how much truth that is, that you know, you got to take everything with a grain of salt when it comes out from China. But to me, this is, if there's a stock that, you know, that I kind of like to look at in this period of time of uncertainty of China tech stocks, Xpeng is probably one of the very few. All right, that pretty much wraps up my video for today. I'll probably do another one on Thursday. If you like what you know what you've seen in today's video, do like and share my video, and also remember to subscribe to my channel. And you can also follow me on Twitter. On my Twitter handle is actually Nick Love Coffee. All right. So once again, thank you everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye.